I'm Eric, I'm a game designer, and today I want to discuss the game design of Darkest Dungeon, how it has so many meaningful choices, the unpredictability of the system, and how it manages to prevent you from rage quitting. Darkest Dungeon is an unforgiving 2D turn-based RPG, in which you manage a party of misfits, fighting your way through several areas, to become powerful enough to conquer the Darkest Dungeon. Every choice you make in Darkest Dungeon is meaningful, not because of what the choice is, but because of the implications and potential consequences of that choice, the effect it can have on your gameplay experience. Every decision you make, every action you take, could have severe consequences. You could fail a quest, lose party members, or one of your strongest trinkets. Since the punishment for losing is so high, all the choices you make in order to prevent losing are more meaningful. You think more thoroughly through the decisions you make, in terms of the party members you select, in which position you put them, and the skills they have. All prior to a dungeon, you already make important decisions. In a dungeon, you constantly consider risk rewards. Is it worth going to this next room when I'm already wounded? Should I use my food now to heal, knowing that I might get hungry later on? And this all persists in battle as well. Should I really take down the high damage dealer in the back with a risk of failing, when I know the two at front could easily take me down at the moment? There's so many choices which will determine your success or failure. And because of your awareness of what you could possibly lose when you fail, every decision carries more weight to it. It induces stress. But the moment you've completed a dungeon, the stress alleviates, and you have this sense of accomplishment and gratification. Your victory tastes even sweeter, because you know how bitter it would have been if you would have lost. To accommodate for this and continuously induce stress on the player, Darkest Dungeon needs to ensure that every time you enter a dungeon, there are new risks attached to it. They want you to always be on your toes, and be considerate and intentional with your actions. Darkest Dungeon wants to establish this sense of unpredictability, and they accomplish this through randomness. Randomness is presented in two different ways within the game. One is based on the generation of system randomness. Before you interact with anything in the dungeon, the game has already created new rooms to discover, new enemy setups, and new challenges and items to discover. Every dungeon is a unique experience. As a result, you never really know what to expect. Of course, you can learn more about a specific area, understand the way the enemies act, but you can never truly predict what you will encounter and how you will encounter it. The second form of randomness is the output randomness. The randomness of you interacting with the system and the feedback to that. The best example I can give is within combat. Your chance to either hit or miss is based on the statistics of the character and the enemy you're facing. And the outcome of this result, the feedback of your action, will eventually be determined by the output randomness. Your chances of successfully executing a move in combat is essential to the stress-inducing element of Darkest Dungeon, because you never know whether your action will be successful. There's always this tension of, what if I fail? What are the consequences of this action? If you are unlucky, a combat scenario which seemed easy might turn out to be much more threatening and complicated than anticipated. Because of this randomness, the game always demands your attention. In order to increase the stakes even more, Darkest Dungeon wants you to care. Care about the characters you take with you in the dungeon, the connection you've built up with them, and how hard you've worked for them. You can personalize your character by naming them, customizing the way they look, picking their skills, but also by taking care of them, making sure they're never fully stressed before entering a dungeon, or by spending a significant amount of resources to lock specific traits, because they're so good on the character. Because you have invested the most valuable resource you have to offer to the game, in other words, your time, knowing that you could potentially lose progress you've made through hours and hours, raise the stakes once again, and induce more stress the moment you start taking risks. It is a vicious cycle you can't escape. The moment you lose a valuable asset in Darkest Dungeon, you will most likely want to rage quit. You hate this game, and you never want to play it again. But to no one's surprise, the next day you once again boot up Darkest Dungeon. This is something the game is designed around, for you to come back once you've cooled down a bit, once you've processed the loss and the grief that you felt. Although you have lost something valuable, there are other assets you still own, other characters you do still care about, that can help you get back up, get your revenge, and become even stronger. Darkest Dungeon suppresses your hatred for the game. Instead of blaming the game for treating you unfairly, you blame yourself for a decision you've made, a choice which caused you to lose. Because you understand that the world of Darkest Dungeon is inherently unfair. All the consequences are usually experienced as a reflection of your own choices. The game provides you with so many choices that it is much easier for a player to attribute their loss to one of those choices. Perhaps they took the wrong character, perhaps they selected the wrong trinket, or perhaps they shouldn't have gone to that one extra room. Darkest Dungeon wants you to thoroughly think about every decision you make. Really choose wisely, because knowing what you could potentially lose makes you feel bad. But the bad will feel so much better when instead of losing, you won. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Game Designer Plays. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you back in my next video. See you there, bye bye.